Hello, my name is Steve Johnson. I've been a VITA volunteer for a little over 8 years. Today I would like to discuss the essentials of education credit, specifically how to get the maximum benefit for our VITA clients. In addition to this video, I would like for you to review the tax treatment of scholarships and fellowship payments on page J3 of the 4012. The two credits that I would like to discuss with you are American Opportunities Credit and Lifetime Learning Credit. American Opportunity Credit is the most favorable of the two. It's based on $4,000 of qualified education expense. If the maximum amount of education expense is used, it will result in a total credit of $2,500 per student. 40% of that credit, $1,000, is refundable. $1,500 is non-refundable, meaning this portion is only available up to the limit of tax liability. Students can use American Opportunity Credit for 4 years. They do not have to be consecutive. They only need to be the first 4 years beyond secondary education. Student must be at least half-time as designated by the institution they are attending. Qualified education institutions and most 4-year institutions are also a requirement. Finally, the student cannot have a felony drug conviction. The lifetime learning credit, on the other hand, is $2,000 per tax return, and it is 20% of whatever is listed. No limit on how many students. So if a student has the maximum of $2,000 that they can claim as an education credit, $4,400 can be as a non-refundable credit. The lifetime learning credit is 100% non-refundable, meaning the refund is only available up to the amount of tax liability. Lifetime learning credit is good for life, meaning and continue to use the lifetime learning credit year after year, as long as they are attending a qualified education institution and it is used to acquire or improve skills. These can be job skills or life skills. So things like yoga or music appreciation can be used for the lifetime learning credit. There are no restrictions on the lifetime learning credit from the standpoint of felony drug convictions like they are on the American Opportunity Credit. I want to address the difference between deductions and credits. Deductions are a reduction in the gross income, or AGI. Taxpayers are taxed on their AGI, and anything that reduces the AGI reduces the amount of income that is taxed, reducing the amount of tax owed. The impact of reducing AGI is on the marginal tax rate. As the AGI is reduced, it is possible to move to a lower tax rate. For example, from 12% to 10%. Credits, on the other hand, are a dollar for dollar tax liability reduction. Whereas deductions reduce the amount taxed, credits help pay any taxes that are owed. There are two types, the non-refundable and the refundable. Non-refundable will only reduce the amount of tax liability. For example, if you have a $1,500 non-refundable credit and a $500 tax liability, the liability will be taken care of. The remaining $1,000 is lost. Refundable, on the other hand, the amount of liability, and in excess over the liability is treated as a refund. In the example that we just used above, if you had a $1,500 refundable tax credit and a $500 tax liability, the $500 would go away and $1,000 would be refunded. Credits are more valuable than deductions because they are a dollar for dollar reduction in taxes versus just the reduction in the amount being taxed. This is applicable to all credits: American Opportunities Credit, Child Tax Credit, Earned Income Credit, and Additional Child Tax Credit. What is the process? It starts with the student providing information on their payments to the academic institution. Student must have a 1098-T. Every academic institution is required to issue this to each student by January 31. This is needed to start the process, and each institution has their own way of complying with this rule. The 1098-T simply shows tuition and fees paid by the student, and it also shows the receipt of scholarship by the student. The more desirable form is the summary account detail. To me, this is the gold standard for entering information into the software because it will provide a breakout by academic term, breaks out tuition, fees, scholarship type, and sometimes books. Students can obtain their account summary by going online to their academic institution. Keeping in mind what I said about the 1098-T, let's look at the information available. This is a screenshot of the 1098-T on page J11 of the 4012. Block 1 details actual funds received by the institution on behalf of the student. Let me mention here, if you have not already heard this, the taxes we are able to do in VITA are strictly on a cash basis. Accrual taxes are out of scope. This is important because any money paid through March 2024 is considered as having been paid in 2023. Block 2 will indicate the amount billed. This cannot be used to apply for education credits. Only the cash amount received. These amounts will be readily seen on the student account summary. Block 5 details the amount of scholarship or grants that a student received during the academic year. The difference between Block 1 and Block 5 is the amount that can be claimed as an education credit. In this case, the difference is exactly $4,000. You need to check blocks 8 and 9 to be sure the student is eligible for American Opportunities Credit. One of these must be checked. A graduate student is eligible only if they have not claimed the credit within the first 4 years after secondary education is completed. If there are amounts in Block 4 or Block 6, claiming American Opportunities Credit is out of scope for VITA. This is a look at a University of Iowa student's account summary. For me, the gold standard for entering information into the software for American Opportunity Credit. While the 1098 gives you an overview of what was paid and what are scholarship payments, account details allow you to see specific detail such as fees, books, and equipment purchases. If any scholarship funds are restricted, restriction will determine if you can shift funds into income. All of this information in the account detail may show on the 1098T. Every student has access to this account detail through their phone, a paper copy, or through computer access. Looking at some of this detail, we see a technology fee, for example. There's a building fee. There is the arts and cultural fee, student activity fee. These fees can be included as eligible if they are required by the institution as a condition of attendance. Note that there are no charges for bookstore purchases. These can be added as eligible expenses for American Opportunity Credit if any of the books are required. All the information here should be summarized on the 1098T and match what is seen as the total paid charges. This is a look at the bottom half of this student's account summary. It provides details of the information in Block 5 of the 1098T. This allows you to determine if any of the scholarship funds are restricted, meaning that the funds cannot be shifted to income to pay other personal expenses. Sometimes restrictions are not clearly defined, and you will have to rely on the student to provide this information. Here's an example of a 2018 DMAC spring portion of account detail. In addition to the items that I pointed out for the fall term, notice the variety of ways that student costs show up. Tuition, web class, web blended course fee. Overall, the totals on the 1098T should match the totals in the account detail, but it is not a guarantee. I tend to opt for the account detail because it will be more accurate in its reporting of funds. Notice down here at the bottom, it indicates term balance 0. Although this was a spring account detail, the money for this was paid through the first 3 months of the calendar year and is therefore available for the American Opportunity Credit. Here is a sample account summary for a DMAC student, which clearly spells out that the DMAC Foundation scholarship is restricted to tuition and fees, meaning that this $1,000 that is restricted cannot be shifted to income in order to increase the American Opportunities credit. So now what? We have all of the information we need to enter data. Two ways to get to the input sheet. Use the side menu, follow the breadcrumbs, enter the keyword, in this particular case, 8863, and it will take you to the Form 8863 education credits. This is among the easiest data entry you will make in TaxSlayer. The radio button, which will pop up on the screen, will be for AOC or LLC. Once you click that button, you will be taken to a screen that indicates the amount of qualified expense. Institutional information will be very similar to the type of information you entered for an employer. And finally, you will hit a group of yes/no questions that address qualifications for the student. We have now come full circle, and we want to ask ourselves the question, how can we achieve the maximum benefit for student and the parents? We know the maximum credit is achieved at 4,000 of qualified expense. If the scholarship covers all the qualified expenses, as we saw with the University of Iowa account summary, is there a way around it? We can shift scholarship funds to income as long as they're not restricted, as in the case of what we saw with the DMAC Foundation Scholarship. Our objective is to get the expenses that are paid by the student or parent to the qualified amount of $4,000. This is done by shifting unrestricted funds to income until the funds paid by the student or parent equals $4,000. This will call for some work on your part to find that sweet spot where the shift in funds results in the highest overall refund for the parent and the student combined. Once we finish this handiwork, we may have a problem because we have created unearned income for the student. What is that problem? Anytime the student has total unearned income above $2,500, that income could be subject to a different tax rate, specifically the parent's tax rate. The key issue is to be careful of not providing more than a total of $2,500 unearned student income. If this does occur, Form 8615 needs to be filed. Tax for children who have unearned income. The filing of the 8615 is out of scope for VITA. Do not shift any scholarship to the point that unearned income exceeds $2,500. Unearned income is any income that is not essentially earned by labor. This would be dividends, capital gains, interest, scholarship, etc. It is important to account for all unearned income when doing a student's taxes. In summary, The American Opportunity Credit is a greater benefit than the Lifetime Learning Credit. $2,500 credit per student versus $2,000 credit per tax return. The American Opportunity Credit also has refundable and non-refundable parts versus non-refundable for the Lifetime Learning Credit. Know the eligibility requirements for both credits. Always compare the 1098-T to the account summary. Students have ready access to both of these documents. When possible, shift scholarship to income to maximize the American Opportunities Credit. Be cognizant of unearned income implications. I want to introduce you to a spreadsheet demonstrating how you can maximize the American Opportunity Credit. This spreadsheet should be available on your computer. If not, ask your site leader on how you may obtain it. I'm going to be entering data on the spreadsheet that I have obtained from the student account summary. I will be entering the data in the green fields of this spreadsheet, starting with the tuition and fees paid in the calendar year. The student did not attend the summer session for 2023 academic year, therefore the entry is 0. Student attended the fall session starting with the 2024 academic year and had a cash payment of $2,500. The student is attending the spring session and made a cash payment of $2,500 on February the 23rd of 2024. So this payment is good for the 2023 tax year. The student tells me they have receipts for some required books and materials. For the fall, the total was $450. For the spring, the total was $425. This brings the total tuition and book expenses to $5,875. The next section we will complete is grants and scholarships. This student's scholarships are all unrestricted, meaning that we can use amounts out of the scholarship to shift into the student's income. The first entry is for the fall semester, and that amounts to $1,800. The second entry is for the spring, and it is also $1,800. The total scholarships and grant received amounts to $3,600. This completes the data entry for the spreadsheet. There's no need to struggle with the math. The spreadsheet will do the heavy lifting. The green cells on the spreadsheet are the only place you need to or can enter data. Just put in the information that is listed on the student activity summary. Next comes the interpretation of the information on the right side of the spreadsheet. At the top right, you have the traditional treatment. This is what you would have worked through with pencil and paper to obtain entries for the TaxSlayer. The number one block indicates the total tuition and books, $5,875. This is the same that was on the left-hand side of the spreadsheet. The total scholarship and grants, $3,600, again, the same as was on the left-hand side of the spreadsheet. The difference between those two amounts to the tuition not funded by scholarship and grants, $2,275. This is the amount that is eligible for the American Opportunity Credit. Okay? This would be reported in the form 8863. The second section, the alternative treatment, is used to maximize the American Opportunities Credit. The first entry shows $1,725. This is the amount we will shift to student income. This entry will be made under income scholarships in TaxSlayer, and the results will show on the 1040 Schedule 1, line 8. The second line shows the amount of tax-free scholarship that will be used for tuition, $1,875. The combination of these two is reflected in the third line, total scholarship and grant, $3,600. This is the same as what was reported on the left-hand side. The fourth line indicates the total of tuition and books, again, which was reported on the left-hand side, $5,875. Less scholarships and grants allocated to tuition, that's the $1,875 that we saw here. The difference between those two is the total eligible expense of $4,000, which will be used in the American Opportunity Credit. Therefore, we have maximized the amount, which we will put into the form 8863. As I said earlier, the green cells of the spreadsheet are the only areas where you can input data. The spreadsheet will do the heavy lifting on completing the calculations. If you wish, when you finish, you can print off the spreadsheet for yourself and or the client. Once this is done, hit the reset button up at the top left. This will clear the spreadsheet for the next use. When closing out, do not save the spreadsheet. This ensures that the next person using the spreadsheet will have a clean entry. At the bottom, you see 3 tabs. The American Opportunity Education Benefits, which we've been working in. The spreadsheet instructions, which goes through all of the information needed to complete the spreadsheet. And then frequently asked questions on education credits. This completes the information relative to demonstrating the education benefits spreadsheet to maximize the American Opportunities Credit.